In today's video, we're going to talk about how to configure a JDK in Jenkins. Are you new here? If you are, welcome. And if you are new here, you don't know who I am. My name is Darren Pope, and I'm a developer advocate for CloudBees. You might be working in an organization that is working on the latest and greatest. At the time of recording, JDK 17 is just about to come out in LTS form. But you might not be living that far ahead on the edge. You might be using JDK 11, which has been LTS for quite a while. Or you might be using JDK 8, still LTS, but it's getting a little older. You might be using JDK 7, JDK 6, maybe even JDK 5. But you're wanting to manage all of your different Java environments on your single Jenkins controller. Now, Jenkins, you might be running that using JDK 8 or JDK 11. But how would you support that 17 or that 7 or that 6 or maybe even that 5? That's what we're going to look at today, of how to properly set up the JDKs within your controller so you can access them from your jobs. Let's talk about where we're starting at today. I have a Jenkins controller that is installed with Jenkins LTS 2.289.1. When it was installed, I used install suggested plugins. Now on both my controller and my agent, yes, I have an agent, it has a label of Linux. The version of Java that is running the processes, on the controller it's running the Jenkins process. On the agent, it's running the agent process. I have the same version of Java running those two different processes. And in my case, it's AdoptOpenJDK, I'm using that flavor of it, 11.0.11. So before I do anything else, let's take a real visual look at what is running on our controller. I'm going to set up a job first. And this job we're going to be changing over time. So I'm going to call this my JDK test job. It is going to be a pipeline. I'm going to click OK. Go down here, paste in pipeline, agent label Linux, no big surprise. Within my shell step, I'm going to get my environment variables, and I'm going to pull out both my path and my Java home environment variables. I want to see what those are. I'm going to run which Java, and then I'm going to do a Java-version to know which version of Java is being used at this point in time. Let's click on Save. But I'm not going to run it just yet. Let's go take a look at how this is set up, and we can understand really what versions of Java we are using to run our processes. So if I go to Manage Jenkins, and I go to System Information, I can scroll down here to the, which one do I want? Java vendor version. This is the one I want to use. So Java vendor version is AdoptOpenJDK 11.0.11 plus 9. So this is what I care about. So this is the version of Java that is running my Jenkins war file, if you want to call it that, or whatever the process is. I'm running just an exploded war file on this instance, so that's what I'm using. So AdoptOpenJDK 11.0.11. Let's go take a look at the agent. We'll go down to the agent and click on System Information. Now this is the system information for the agent. Same thing, when we take a look at, where is it? I went too far again. Here we go. We are looking at Java vendor version, AdoptOpenJDK 11.0.11. So these are the two versions of Java that are on the agent and on the controller. These are the default versions of Java that are running on these two instances. So let's go and run this job that we just created. Let's look at the output. If we look at the output here, we do an env grep. We see with the path, I have some variables that are already set up. I can see userlib adopt OpenJDK 11 hotspot bin. That's what we're doing. Which Java is userlib jvm adopt OpenJDK. And the Java version is 11.0.11. So what happened here? Well, in my environment, I have a profile D file. I am using CentOS 7.9. You might be using a Debian flavor, or you might be using another Fedora flavor. I'm going to leave that detail up to you, or maybe even Windows. It's possible. And you could take a look at this and understand, okay, which one am I using? Now, let's flip back to what we see here. We are running Java version 11.0.11. So if I did Maven right now, it would pick up and use this Java here. Or if I was just doing a Java C or whatever it is, this is the version of Java that would be used. But let's say that I have an application that needs to use a different version of Java. Let's figure out how to go and set that up. I'm going to show you a few different ways you can do that. Fortunately, it all happens in the exact same place. And that place, not surprisingly, is over in Manage Jenkins, Global Tool Configuration. At this top section, you'll see JDK. Let's add a JDK. So when we click on this, it says, oh, we can install automatically. Thumbs up. Less work for me. But let's see here. Oracle Java SE 11 is not available for businesses, commercial, or production use without a commercial license. Okay. Public updates for Oracle Java SE 8 released after January 2019 will not be available without a commercial license. Okay. Since we already have AdoptOpenJDK 11.0.11 installed, we're good for the 11 for right now. Let's say I want to pick and use the specific JDK from Oracle for 7. So we'll pick the latest available version on 7, which is 7U80. I'm going to give it a name. That name I'm going to give it is, not surprisingly, or maybe surprisingly, Oracle-7U80. And I also have to agree to the licensing agreement. I also have to log in. So let me go log in. And let's see, we'll do this, and we'll do this. And we'll click OK. And it was saved. I can close that up. All right. So that's it, right? It's all installed right now, right? No, not yet. Let's click on Save. So if we were to go back and take a look at that one more time, we now have, instead of Add JDK, we have JDK installations. We click on that, and then it exposes, okay, here are the JDKs that are now available to be installed, and that's a very important phrase, to be installed. So let's go back over to our job. We're going to modify our job, click on Configure, and let me grab my line that I need to use. So I'll go underneath Agent and paste in Tools. The tool I'm using is JDK, and I'm going to pick Oracle-7U80. Remember, that's what we named our JDK instance that's there. So let's click on Save. And now let's click on Build Now. Let's watch the output. We can see here that it's installing JDK 7U80. It's downloading it from download.oracle.com. And it's downloading about 150 meg. So I'll speed up through this video and start talking again when this is done. Well, that didn't take very long, did it? Let's see here. We do our output. Here's our env. We see our path. Well, this is interesting, isn't it? Home Vagrant Agent Tools Hudson Model JDK Oracle 7U80/bin. Look at our Java Home now. Home Vagrant Agent Tools Hudson Model JDK Oracle 7U80. And then which Java? We're using this Java. And when we do our Java version, we see Java 1.7.80. So let's understand what happened here. When the job ran, it installed the version of Java on the agent. This is the key part here. It installed it on the agent, not on the controller. All the controller has at this point is just 11.0.11. And notice where it installed the tooling. Just so you understand, my agent is set up to have all of the agent things under the home directory, which is home vagrant, in the agent folder. If you don't believe that, let me show you where that is. So if we take a look at agent 1, and take a look at configure, we can see here that the remote root directory for my agent is home vagrant agent. Let's go back over to that job. Take a look at number 2. So here is the remote directory. It created a tools directory. And underneath that, it said Hudson Model JDK. So this is for the JDKs. And then it used the name that I provided, Oracle-7U80. And then it included the bin just on the path. So it put it at the front of the path. So that means any commands that are being run are going to be using whatever's at the front. You may notice here that it actually did 2 entries. Okay, whatever, we're good with that. But you can still see my 11 hotspot here. And that's okay because I don't care about this one because it's further down the path. What I care about is what's right here at the very front. And we can verify that from the which Java it was using the 7U80. And we can also tell from the Java version, I'm also using the 780. So now we have a JDK 7 version 80 available to us on our agent. We access it by setting, let's go back up here, by setting a tools section. And tools can be set on a per stage basis as well. I'm just setting it globally right now, but I could have just as easily put tools. I'll show you. I'm not going to leave it here. I could have just as easily done something like this. Of course, there we go. So I could have done that on a per stage basis. But really I want, for these examples, I only need one JDK for my examples, so I'm just leaving it here at the global level. Okay, let's finish cleaning that up. Since I made changes, let's make sure. I saved it. I click on Build Now. Let's look at 3 just to make sure everything's still good. Got a green check mark. Let's make sure the output is what I expect. It's 780. So we're good. So now we have a JDK 7 available to us on our agent. Now, we've got 7. We've got an 11. We'll revisit that after a while. But let's say I also need a 6. So I'm going to walk you through one way to do that. There are numerous ways you can do it. I'm going to show you a way to do it. We're going to go over to the agent. And with the agent, we can go ahead and log on here and just do a java-version. And we see that it's 11. And I'm going to go ahead and do a sudo alternatives, list java. Whoops, I did that wrong. Just list. And we can see the only thing that we have at the moment is the AdoptOpenJDK 11. That's okay. So let's go back to here. Let's install the OpenJDK for 1.6, and we're installing the real JDK, which means we have to, whoops, I didn't copy that, did I? Let's copy that again. There we go. So let's clear that up. We're installing the -devel package. If I just installed that, that would be the JRE. In order to get the JDK for OpenJDK, you have to install the -devel package. So I'm going to say that's okay, and I'm going to say yes. As this is being installed, you can see that we're installing all the packages, no big deal. If you've installed this before, all of this looks normal. Now, let's see what happens when I do java-version. Still showing OpenJDK 11.0.11. So that's cool. But I want to check something else. Alternatives, config, Java. So you can see there are 2 here. I want to make sure that it's always 1. I always want my default for my environment to be AdoptOpenJDK 11.0.11. That's just what I want. due to how my path is set up, it was beating out alternatives, which is fine. It's good, but I'm still forcing this back to be 11.0.11. But here's the key thing. Notice the pathing for my OpenJDK 6 version. I can see here that it's userlib JVM JRE. Ignore this JRE, it's actually the JDK. 160 OpenJDK x8664, and then bin Java. I'm going to copy this value here because of how we're going to use it next. Let's go back over to our controller. We are going to add a new JDK. JDK installations. We'll click on Add JDK, but this time we're going to delete the installer. So we're not wanting to install the Oracle Java SE thing. Not what we want to do. Now that we've deleted that, I also want to uncheck install automatically. So now we're left with a Java home directory. Java home. That looks like a Java home, right? Because if you've installed Java at any point in time, it's usually the path right above the bin directory. If we flip back over and take a look here, this would be the Java home for our OpenJDK 6 version, because here's bin Java. This name is going to be, because I know what the version is, OpenJDK 16041. Now you'll notice a warning here saying this is not a directory on the Jenkins controller, but perhaps it exists on some agents. This is the key part here, but perhaps it exists on some agents. Cool. Because remember, I don't need this version of Java on my controller. Not important. It needs to be on the agent because we're doing all of our builds on the agent. Let's go ahead and click on Save. Let's go modify our job now. So we'll go here, Configure, grab my name. We're going to change our Oracle definition to OpenJDK 16041. Let's click on Save. Let's do a build now. Let's see what happens. Green check mark, that's good. Is our output userlib JVM bin? Yeah, that looks good. Our Java home? Yeah, that looks good. Which Java? Pathing looks good. Java version 16041. So now we have access to our JDK 6 on our agent just by changing the name that was being passed into that JDK definition. So now we have a 7 and we have a 6. We saw in this 6 setup is we just defined where the Java home is for that installation. So that means I could have installed that just unzipping a file or untarring a file, whatever it is. I just said, hey, it's over here. Go use it in this directory. And that's it. So now we have a 7, we have a 6, let's say we need an 8. Let's go and install an 8 a little bit differently. Let's go back over to the dashboard, Manage Jenkins, Global Tools, JDK Installations. Now this time, add JDK. Let's delete the installer. Now we need to add an installer. So this install Oracle Java SE, that's the one that we just deleted. We don't need this. What we're going to do this time is we are going to do an extract of a zip or tar.gz. Now for this name is going to be AdoptOpenJDK 8U292. This label is the label of the agent that we want this to be available to be installed on. So in my case, that's Linux, and I actually found it. And it says label Linux matches one node, permissions, the rest of the thing. Doesn't matter. The download URL for this binary archive, I have that right here. Put that in. Once I tab out of that, it says, oh, no longer a malformed URL. That's great. And I got this information directly from the AdoptOpenJDK site. So if you want to go figure that out, I'll leave that for homework for you. finally, within this tarball, or this gzipped tarball, there is a subdirectory. So the subdirectory that we want to use of the extracted archive is, as I copy it, JDK 8U292-B10. So if you were to do a tar XZVF to extract it, you would see this directory at the top. So we need to include this because this is going to be part of what becomes the Java home. Let's click on Save. And we'll go back over to Dashboard. Let's modify our job. We need to grab the name that we defined. The name we defined is AdoptOpenJDK-8U292. Okay, so far, so good. Let's click on Save, and then click on Build Now. So as we do Build Now, you're going to see that it's downloading this tarball, and it is extracting it to Vagrant Agent Tools, Hudson Model JDK, AdoptOpenJDK 8U292. So this looks exactly like what we saw when we were using the Oracle installation. If we take a look at our output for path in Java Home, we can see that, oh yeah, there's the AdoptOpenJDK 8U292. When I do a which Java, it's pathing down to 8U292, and here's that extracted archive subdirectory that we specified. And if we take a look at Java-version, we see that it's 180.292. So this is the version of Java that we just installed. So that's a pretty simple way to do it. I give it the location of where the tarball is. I tell it if there's a subdirectory, use this. And from that point forward, the install automatically section takes care of putting it in the right place, which in my case is the remote directory on the agent under the tools directory, Hudson Model JDK, and then it extracts things based on the name. Finally, I've got just one more. So we've got a 6, we've got a 7, we've got an 8, and we have our default one that is running on our agent and our controller, which is the 11.0.11. But let's say for a moment, hypothetically, that I actually need to use 11.0.9 because there's something in 11 that doesn't work, but it does work in 9. 11 works great for just running the agent process and the controller process, but my application doesn't like something in the 11.0.11. However, it does work with 11.0.9. Let's look at one more way to do the installation. Let's go back over to Dashboard. We'll go to Manage Jenkins, Global Tool Configuration, JDK Installations. We're going to add one more JDK. In this case, this is going to be AdoptOpenJDK 11.0.9. I'm going to delete the installer. Delete the installer, there we go. Add the installer. In this case, I'm going to run a shell command. Much like we saw with the extract, I need to give it a label. In this case, it's Linux. So it's going to, any agent that has the label of Linux, this would be available for it. And for my command, this doesn't have to be a one-liner, it can be, but I've got a handful of commands I'm going to paste in. And then we'll take a look at it. Let me expand it just a little bit. Okay. So here's the thing when you run a shell command. Every time a job runs, this command will also be run. So that's the reason why, knowing where I'm going to put this. So there is a home Vagrant JDKs directory. So this is not under the home Vagrant agent, but I'm just saying, hey, I want to put it in the JDKs directory under my home directory of the actual instance. So what I'm doing is I'm defining a directory variable, and I'm saying, okay, if I find the directory, then found. I got a little bit too much there. So we'll do found, skipping installation. How about that? That's probably better. Let's do that. So if it finds the directory, I'm going to make the assumption that it's installed, it's all good, don't worry about it. Otherwise, it's going to make the directory home vagrant JDKs. I'm going to cd into that directory. And then in a one-liner, I'm wgetting the 1109 tarball, and then I'm doing an extract. This is a variation of the extract that we just saw, but this is me taking full control over every little step. So in my case, this JDK is going to be installed in the home directory of my user, which is vagrant, just into JDK. So it's not going underneath agents. Now, for tool home, I need to give the directory of that, because that is where the tarball will be extracted to. Let's go ahead and click on Save. Let's go back over to our job, click on Test Job, click on Configure. Let's grab the name, 1109. We're going to change our JDK to that. Let's click on Save and watch what happens. Oh, that's boring. That's nothing. That's easy. Let's click on Build Now and watch what happens. Let's watch 6. So it's running that little script that we wrote, or those multiple lines. It's downloading that tarball, and it's being very explicit about what's going on here. So let me go down to the bottom and we can watch it. Actually, it went too far. So it did all of that. It extracted it. It does a second check for environment variables. It's like, oh, I already found it, skipping installation. So it actually does a few checks based on what's going on with environment variables. Then we can see here, oh, our path is 1109. Java home is 1109. The which Java looks pretty good. And when we do Java version, it's 1109. And that's it. I showed you 4 and really 5 different ways you can use a JDK on your agent. Number 1, just use the default JDK that it's installed that's running the agent process. In our case, that was 11.0.11. Secondly, we were able to use the Oracle installation. We did have to log in. We had to have a username and credential to install 7U80. So we were able to get Java 7 installed that way. Third, we installed the OpenJDK 6 version that was available through CentOS. It was a little bit older version, but you get the drift. You could just install it however you want to do it. And then we specified the location for the Java home. So the installation was our responsibility, and we told it what the Java home would be for that version. So we have 11, 7, and 6. Number 4, we did an extract. So we did an install automatically, but we got rid of the Oracle default that pops in, and we created a new installation using extract, using either a zip or a tarball. Defined the things that we needed to define, and then we also had AdoptOpenJDK 8. Finally, as a variation of the extract, we just provided a shell script. In the shell script, you have to remember every time that a job runs, and in fact we saw multiple times as the job ran through, is checking to see if that directory, in our case, we were checking for the directory, does it exist? If it exists, skip it, go ahead and move on, because I'm assuming if it exists, everything is there and working correctly. And at that point, we were able to install a different version of 11, in fact, 11.0.9. Now, if you're using Docker, you probably don't even care about any of this, because you would pick a specific version of the JDK to use as your agent. But in the cases to where you're still using static agents and you need to load up specific tools on those agents, you have different ways to do it. Maybe you use all the different ways that you saw today. My recommendation is to pick one way and try to stick with it. So in reality, that might be more of a way of using something like Ansible or Chef or Puppet to put your JDKs on the agent in very specific locations and use the method like we did for OpenJDK 6 to where you just specify the Java home. That way you're not worried about downloads or installations or anything else. Have another tool take care of laying down the bits for whatever JDKs you need on your agent, and then within Jenkins, you just set up a very simple Java home pointing at that location, and you're good to go. If you have any questions or comments, you can reach out to us on Twitter @CloudBeesDevs. If this video was helpful to you, give us a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed to CloudBees TV yet, why not? Take a moment, click on that subscribe button, and then ring that bell, and you'll be notified anytime there is new content available on CloudBees TV. Thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next video.